Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue in the United States primarily, but really all over the Western world, about crushing student loan debt, college student loan debt. Now, there's a whole bunch of videos doing the rounds on social media where students, primarily minorities, talking about the student debt, how it's they're never going to pay it off in their lifetime, or they're going to be in their mid to late 40s before they can pay it off, and their lives are ruined by this debt. They've discovered the degree they've got is somewhat worthless, and it doesn't get them a job in areas or industries that they thought that it might, or that they've been told it might. They complain they've been told that they couldn't get a decent job without a college degree. They went and got the degree and still found that they couldn't. So there was a lot of misunderstanding about what the degree would get, or which degree, what course of study, and these sorts of things. So I guess we need to. I noticed sort of in the mid 1990s. Going to the United States, and I was spending quite a lot of time in the United States, how I was talking to people who the company I was working for was opening up a couple of offices in the United States, and in one of them I had the people from human resources didn't turn up, or they were late, and I ended up doing most of the interviewing, and I was surprised at how many people turned up who had, or how many people I spoke to rather, had 2 degrees or a degree and a master's, or 2 degrees and a master's. And on paper, these people looked incredibly well qualified, and I was surprised at the sort of jobs they were applying for. But I thought, well, if you can get people that well qualified and that well educated to do these jobs, then why not? And I was always of the view that it's okay to get overqualified people, because then you can count on them to be more reliable, dependable, better educated, more diligent. And if they've got 2 degrees and a master's, or 2 degrees, whatever, they must be pretty diligent people, because that's quite a lot of hard work. but I was looking at it from the point of view in Australia, which is a few years behind the US, certainly, where in order to get into university, you had to be quite a good accomplished student. In order to get your degree, you had to be an accomplished student. To get a master's, you had to be like really good. And to get a PhD, I mean, wow, you were top of the town. And I hadn't realised the extent to which things were being looked at quite differently in the United States. The view in the education system in the US at the time, which I didn't pick up on immediately, was that giving everybody gifting them a degree, earned or not, meritorious, giving everyone a degree would create an equal society. So getting people to achieve a high standard, no, that wouldn't achieve equality. Just give everyone a degree and then everyone's equal. So it was the idea that a degree became just a piece of paper they gave you, some sort of bullshit certification, and that could socially re-engineer the world so that the patriarchy and white supremacy wouldn't reign supreme. Now the reality was that you can always find an exception, I suppose. The reality was that the kids getting through to university were the brightest students. The ones getting the degree were the brightest students. So that happened to be nearly all straight white males. Then that's how it was. But this was seen very differently by the social engineers. The fact that straight white males were predominantly getting the degrees was simply proof that Nazis and misogyny and patriarchy and racism and Hitler and swastikas, that was the reason. And so they were going to short circuit all that misogyny and Hitlerism and just give everyone a degree, and that'd fix it. And I didn't pick up on it. So I was interviewing people who had 2 degrees and they were still functionally illiterate, and it felt like I was talking to a junior high school kid who wouldn't have made it out of junior high school. They'd have flunked junior high school. This was the level of people I was talking to. I was quite surprised by this. I remember it took me by surprise. I thought, well, how's it possible to get 2 degrees or a degree and a master's and you're still a moron? I just didn't follow it. Now, some of the degrees were I mean, they weren't what you call STEM, but say a degree in business, majoring in marketing, or a degree in business communications, majoring in operations. I think there are all sorts of different degrees and flavors of degrees that I came across. And in Australia, we didn't have that spread of degrees. Still there was a core set of sure, there were things like peace studies and gender studies were creeping in, but nowhere near to the extent. There's no such thing as lesbian dance theory degrees or something like stuff like that. But what happened, particularly in the US, as I say, was that it was seen as an exercise in social engineering, not an exercise in education, and that's where it came unstuck. So the idea was to put low IQ minorities, people IQ of 80 or 90, kids that were lazy and stupid, and they were never going to get a qualification in anything. And so we pushed them through the education system, and then gift them affirmative action or diversity, equity and inclusion degrees and qualifications. And to do that, they had to create separate courses, like lesbian dance theory and African American music studies or something like that. Just say, I went to college and I got a degree. But this came at a great cost. Now, it still hadn't really gone crazy at that point until Obama came along. Now, what Obama and the people around him and the social engineers around him did was to say, well, look, what we'll do is we'll create all these additional courses, easy, no one fails courses, where it's, the degree is really a participation trophy. And instead of having private lenders giving student loans, because the private lenders tended to look at the value of the degree and look at the quality of pass that the student got. Also, the private lenders were onto the scam of affirmative action high school diplomas. So just because the black lesbian had the high school diploma didn't mean that they were good students. It just meant they were given a high school diploma on a participation trophy basis, rather than they hit the books and worked hard and actually knew what they were doing. So the Obama administration said, okay, well, the government will do the loans. And not that the government hadn't been involved previously, but effectively the private sector was sort of pushed out, and the government will do the loans, and we will place a heavy emphasis on giving loans to minorities. So, a low IQ black kid from the projects is now going to get we're going to get them to go to university, because that will create this equal society, that equal outcome society. So you had this massive inflow of kids that academically had no merit at all to their their credentials, and that they're lazy, they're incompetent, they're stupid, moronic, low IQ, and they were dazzled by this. They didn't understand what they were signing up for, and they were dazzled. Oh, I'm going to go to university. I'm the same as those hardworking, industrious, super bright white kids. I'm the same as them now. I may only have an IQ of 80, and I may be lazy as fuck, but I'm now the same. Equal outcomes. And so they flooded in, all sorts of minorities, flooded into the Hispanic kids, and also flooded into the education system, the tertiary education system, and without any chance of getting a meaningful degree, or and they were also socially radicalized as well. But this was the beginning of the end of tertiary education as we know it in the world, the Western world, because a lot of the other Western countries somewhat followed suit, using the American example of, wow, that they know what they're doing. We'll just do what they're doing. So the disaster spread, the contagion spread all over the Western world, encouraged by the globalist cabal, by the way, spread across the Western world, and so there was now a vast number of people who were stupid and lazy and couldn't get a degree to save their lives, that were running around in university and getting these useless degrees. Now of course they're finding that they can't, they can't get a job to pay it off. Now in Australia, if you fall below, at least this is my my understanding, if you fall below a certain income for 10 years after you get the degree, then the government kind of writes it off. Okay, now we'll give it to you for free. Obviously, it's not creating any wealth for you, so we'll take the cost of that. But a lot of students game the system, particularly the lower IQ students that should never have been at university anyway. They just either don't work or work some casual bullshit jobs for 10 years, and then their debt's removed. But by that stage, they're in their early 30s and they've effectively wasted 10 years. So I don't think anyone really wins from that sort of situation. Should students be put into such debt for the, well, no, especially not for the sort of degrees they're getting. So the whole thing was a scam. Now I want to just talk about how the scam works. I'll just use simple things here, but simple examples here. But there's an increasing number of jobs, work, small subsets of work where you have to now have a certification, an education of some sort. That certification can be a bullshit certification. For example, there's a course for 12 weeks where you have to do some. You can do it even online, but it's or go to a class. But it's 12 weeks where you do 1 hour a week, and it's $150 an hour. So it washes up at close to $2,000, and it's like a community college, tech college type course. But that certifies you to do some sort of like health and safety type rating, some sort of safety rating. And that's a bullshit thing, but it generates, and this is how the scam works and the round robin of the scam works. You can get a loan, if you're a poor student, because poor students mainly the ones attracted to this because it's a couple of $1,000. So you can go and get a loan from a bank to pay it off, to pay for the course rather, which you then have to pay the bank back. So it's just a couple of $1,000, so it's not a crippling sum. Nonetheless, it's not needed. It's something that's being imposed. It's artificially being imposed. So you have to have this certification, otherwise you can't do the work. But why do you need a certification? Well, the insurance company won't insure that facet of your business unless a certified person did it. The certified person can't do it till they get certification. They have to go to the community college to get it. That's the only place that'll issue it. And then they have to get a loan only from this and that bank. So the banks and the insurance companies and the government are working in tandem to generate revenue for each other for something that's not needed in the first place. It's a scam. And a lot of this applies to university degrees now. So, for example, in order to switch on a power board, electrical power board, you must be a certified electrician. You can't be an apprentice electrician or, you must, or electrical engineer rather. So only an electrical engineer can switch that on. So you have to be able to get, now if you don't get an electrical engineer to switch it on, then it won't be insured. And so you have to get the engineer and so on and so forth. So they generate an artificial demand. I mean, the electrical engineer can do other things, but they create an artificial demand in many ways for people to have a certification or an alleged qualification by refusing insurance cover. Now, the government says if you don't have that insured, you can't switch it on. So the government, again, working in tandem with insurance, with education institutions, to create this artificial demand for insurance, insurance fees, and generates fees for the so-called education sector. But it was never, that was never needed at all anyway. So this is how the scam sort of works. But on the sociological side, it supposedly is creating an equal outcome. But here you get, Shaniqua's got her degree in African American lesbian studies or something like that, and which nobody fails at. She during that time is radicalized to believe the world is awash with white supremacy and Hitler and swastikas and so on, and then comes out of college, certainly no better educated when she went in, got a useless bit of paper, but she's now in debt for like $50,000. She's never going to get paid that back. Her life is effectively been ruined by this. But as a kid, a 17 or 18-year-old kid looking at going into university, what she sees is, I'm going to be the same as those white evil devils. I'm going to be the same as them. They won't make to look down at me anymore. I'm going to have a degree at university. I'm going to be a degree holder. And without understanding that holding the bit of paper is what she sees, Shaniqua sees. Whereas, the white kid from the middle class white family sees, wow, I've got to work really hard here. My parents have explained how this all goes. I've got to study. I've got to hit the books. I've got to bust my ass. I've got to get a good degree, and then be able to get a good job. Now this doesn't even work out in the STEM field, because the whole world can now come to the West seeking work. So the college graduate that could have come out of who got a computer science or computer coding or something like that, could have come out of college and walked straight into a decent paying job that at least paid more than the average wage as a starter, as a starting job. Now finds that if they want to, that there's a bunch of Indians that are being brought over that'll work the same job for half or 2/3 of what they had to pay the white guy. Now maybe you don't get such a good job being done. The quality of work certainly by my experience, I've got a lot of it. The quality of work that the Indians do is piss poor by my experience. But nonetheless, the corporations are saving big bucks. They're getting very cozy government contracts where there's kind of nothing really to be done. They're just being paid for doing nothing. It's all political and sorted out in the back room. So they don't give a shit if they've got low quality, parasitic, lazy Indian workers there. It makes no difference to them. In fact, they're more desirable for the cozy contracts that are being handed out by the government to their consulting company buddies. So even getting a good STEM pass, computer coding as an example, even in engineering, something I've noticed in Australia recently, the amount of in the big engineering firms, which are all relying on cozy government contracts, by the way, the big engineering firms, there's one recently announced that their chief engineering manager or something is this Indian chick with a heavy accent. I mean, that's the only person they could get to do the job. I mean, you are kidding me, right? There'd have been tens of thousands of white guys, straight white males that could have done that job, but they picked this recent migrant Indian chick with a thick accent. I mean, that's ridiculous. So coming back to the education thing, though, maybe the intentions were good. I don't think the intentions were good, incidentally, but maybe the intentions were good. Let's make sure all these minorities get degrees as well. Well, if you want to ensure that, make sure they get a better education. Make sure they pass the exams. Make sure they hit the books. Make sure they work hard. Make sure they've got an ethic, an intense ethic for studying and working hard and doing their revision work and coming to the exams prepared. Put your effort into that. No. We just want a quick, easy way to get the outcome, and let's throw them all into the education system and load them up degrees. So if the intentions were good, again, I don't believe it. All it's done is enrich a sector of the education, or the tertiary education sector, and even high schools to some extent. Well, there are gazillions of kids going through senior high school that really should have left. They're too dumb to still be at school. They're just causing trouble. And then they go to university now and they cause trouble again, because they're fighting Hitler and white supremacy or something. So they now they've saddled these very low IQ people who wouldn't have passed anything anyway with debts that they'll never be able to service. And I think that's a tragedy. I think it shouldn't be celebrated. It hasn't created this equality nirvana. All it's done is destroy the lives of millions of minority kids that were too dumb and stupid to realise what they were getting into. You've been with Tastus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.